So I'm going to argue that the dinos have rights and dinos can sue InGen and
For being created?
sure.
Can I sue God for creating me?
Well, good luck serving him.
Oh, welcome, everybody, to another episode of Doug Defends. This is the show where a real lawyer talks about fake things and the points don't matter. I think I stole that from somewhere. My name is Billy Business, and of course, we don't have a show if it's not for our man, Mr. Doug Ridley.
Thank you, Billy Business. I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to talking about fake stuff.
Fake stuff, but with your very real, probably expensive law degree.
It was also expensive. Yes.
You guys have to sub and watch the ads so Doug can pay his
Yes,
student
please,
loans, okay?
please.
Okay, so today we're going to go back in time a little bit. In fact, we're going to go back about 65 million years, if that's okay with you. You know, when law was at its best,
I was
right?
thinking you were going to say like 32 years, but yeah, no, I get it.
So today we are talking about the original 1993 Jurassic Park. It starred Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Sir Richard Attenborough, and Samuel L. Jackson, of course. Good old Sammy J. This was based on the Michael Crichton novel of the same name, although there's a lot of differences from the novel to the film.
For sure.
A lot of those things that didn't end up in the movie ended up in other movies down the road. This movie has 6 sequels, one of which is Jurassic World Rebirth, which is in theaters this July, 32 years after the original. It's a pretty good run for a franchise that's not called Star Wars to be spitting out sequels 32 years later.
This is true.
This is true. We're getting back in the time machine. We're gonna go forward a little bit to 1993. Doug with hair. In a movie theater?
In a movie theater.
Okay.
Pre-marriage, Doug.
Oh.
This is I went with my buddy and I remember us coming back and two spry college age students. We were scared out of our minds, like couldn't go to sleep that night.
Yeah.
Like never seen anything like that. And I mean there's rewatching this movie again, first of all, it totally holds up. Like all the special effects and everything still hold up wonderfully. But there's just something about the big, that big dramatic sequence when Sam Neill looks up, Laura Dern looks up, and they can see the dinosaurs for the first time, and the beautiful John Williams score, and still, I mean, that gets me every time. I love the majesty of that, and funny enough, like they even comment on that in future sequels, right? I mean, Ian Malcolm says, "Oh yeah, first it's all ooh wonderful dinosaurs."
Ooh that's how it always starts, but then later there's running and screaming.
So then it's the killing and yelling and running and
so this, if you've ever wondered what the age disparity between Doug and I is, I was not allowed to see Jurassic Park in the theater because my parents deemed it too scary for me, being 7 years old when it came out.
Okay, well then let's see that tracks then.
So my parents were just like, they went and saw it. They're like, no way, dude. You're not seeing this. But I still got a lot of the Jurassic Park toys when I was a kid. Let me tell you something, folks at home. And if you're a millennial, you know this. Those figures were so crazy. It is a completely different movie. Look at what they did to my boy, Dennis Nedry, a.k.a. Terminator Newman.
My God, that's ridiculous.
Every action figure.
Let's just talk about, first of all, I don't remember a Dennis Nedry moment with sunglasses, a holster, and
no, my boy's packing heat in this.
Driving gloves.
Could you imagine if he was like, "Hello, Jerry," you know, with this. I mean, this is a different.
This is a guy that wouldn't have eaten it with the spitters.
No way.
No. This is a guy that would have just had he had his sunglasses on, so the spitters wouldn't have got him at all.
No, this guy is murking dinosaurs and then protecting Sarah Connor. Like, this is a different thing. So when I did finally see Jurassic Park on VHS, maybe like a year or two later, a little different than I thought it was going to be. I'm not going to lie to you. It was a little bit of culture shock. I'm like, this isn't the same thing. But of course, you're right. This is a movie that it holds up. The effects hold up because they don't show the dinosaurs as much as you would think. If you were actually to take a stopwatch and time how much of the movie like you really see dinosaurs and like full close up, it's pretty small because they use it so effectively. Something I think that other movies get away from. But you know what? We're not here to review the merit of the film. We are here to talk legalities of Jurassic Park.
There are so many problems with Jurassic Park. It's just there's a lot.
Okay, so let's get into this. Before we even get into the craziness, do you take offense to the blood-sucking lawyer and the maybe just the overall kind of perception of lawyers in pop culture while we're at it?
Lawyers in pop culture in general, it doesn't bother me, and it's because so many of my legal brethren have created that viewpoint, and it's justified. For strangely enough, not everybody is as nice of a lawyer as I am, so or laughs as much or smiles at all or anything like that. And as we saw in the show, the lawyer portrayed in Jurassic Park was a blood-sucking lawyer. He cared about money, nothing else. I mean, so he played that role perfectly. Like, when people start making lawyer jokes and all of that, like, I roll my eyes. I usually finish the punchline. If you put in the comments, by the way, some really good lawyer jokes, if I've never heard it before, I will comment on it. Because I think I've heard every lawyer joke that exists.
That sounds like a challenge.
It is a challenge.
That sounds like a challenge.
It is a challenge. I've just completely co-opted the entire comment section to be like, how many, what you call a bunch of lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? A good start. So delete that one and know that I just made fun of you.
Okay. Well, glad that we're starting off the episode just really endearing ourselves to our audience.
I want to hear it. I want to hear a lawyer joke that I've never heard before. I would love to hear that.
Come at me, bro.
Let's go.
Yeah. So, okay. I was watching this movie the other night, and the thing that got me was I was like, okay, this guy, maybe he's a blood-sucking lawyer. He's really committed, though. Like, would you get on a little ferry, a paddle ferry, and go to an offsite to meet a client like he does at the very beginning of the movie? Remember, and Hammond isn't there, which is even worse.
And what struck me about that, I mean, he's definitely like ready for the jungle because he's got his like white suit on.
Right.
That's where he prepared, you know, and then the matching white hat. I mean, he's ready to go. But I just kept being so afraid for him as he's standing up on the middle of this little like 4x4 raft being pulled by a rope across the river. But that wasn't your question.
My question
your question is would I go on site? And hell yes, I would go on site. I absolutely would.
Okay, well, because the other thing that kind of popped into my head that I thought was like, is this really what would happen? Which is, he says that he's representing the investors of Jurassic Park, and that he's there to do an inspection on their behalf. But is that really a lawyer do? That seems like he would not be the one that would actually go.
You're totally right. Yeah. And you wouldn't send the corporate lawyer. On the other hand, there definitely are times where you do want your lawyer on site, where you do want them there, maybe for a meeting or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Some of my friends are employment law attorneys, and they will actually do investigations into workplace issues and things like that. So lawyers doing an investigation isn't without precedent. If I was hired by the board of directors and they said, come down to Costa Rica and check out our new dino zoo, and we'll pay for all expenses for you to go down there and check it out. You'll be one of the first people in the world to check it out. And I had John Hammond selling me on it and the board of directors selling me on it. You bet I would go down there. I mean,
For
think of that.
dinosaurs?
Yes. Imagine for a second if they said, hey, we have a new Disneyland that we're putting in Rome, and we want you to make sure that that lawyers are portrayed in a friendly manner throughout the park.
Yes, John, but if
Yes.
Pirates of the Caribbean breaks down, the pirates don't eat the tourists.
Thank you, Ian. Perfect.
Okay, so let's talk about first of all the legalities of what's happening here. I feel like I say to my knowledge, which is minimal at best. What are kind of the legalities of cloning just in general? Like, would this be shut down before it even got so far as to have like a theme park? If like whatever governing board, I don't know who even enforces like if someone's doing something like that.
Well, in 1993, the laws were a lot more strict than they are today. Because today you have genetic modification of vegetables and crops, and you do have genetic modification of animals, of cows, of cattle, of our livestock that we consume, and all of that. So I've even heard that they make Brussels sprouts taste better now. So
there's hope for you yet.
No, there's not. But having said that, the idea of genetic modification and genetic modifying of animals is something that happens. And honestly, like these days, even for humans, the advances that we've had with in vitro fertilization for people that want kids and struggle with that allows you to choose gender, allows you to pre-select out different aspects and different qualities that different dangerous maybe unhealthy genetic traits that happen with babies, embryos, fetuses. So the idea of genetic modification, because science is kind of caught up to it at this point, is not as awful and horrible and taboo as it was in 93. I don't know if we could get to full-blown dinos at this point.
Sure.
But then the question obviously is posed by all the scientists.
But assuming I had the capital to have my own lab, is there any law that says I can't make my own person? I can't make my own animal? I can't bring back something that's extinct?
I don't believe that there is anything that says you can't bring back an animal that's extinct. And I don't believe, but when we get into humans, then now, yes, you're talking about some limitations on creating a clone, and there are laws and regulations about that.
Do you know like vaguely what the law, like, is it just
well,
you can't do it?
International Justice Court 783.2. No. But
you just know you can't do it.
I just know you can't do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can't, or you have to get like extra special permission.
Can't. I mean, human cloning is not something that we've authorized yet. Okay. And it comes back to that question that they actually ask in the movie. You're so focused on whether you could, you didn't ask whether you should. And the should aspect of that is what still governs.
But aren't we getting to a point where it's like, okay, I can't clone myself or a dead relative, but aren't we getting to a point where it's like, but you could maybe take one of my cells, my stem cells, and clone and maybe make me a new kidney if I needed it?
They are getting to that point. Yeah. So we're not that far away from scientifically looking at a jump and it being more okay.
Right.
I think that there are, going back to like IVF, there are aspects of that where you are taking stem cells, you are taking cells from two donors and creating life. It's not cloning because it's not the same set of DNA just from one person.
Right.
But if my wife and I decide to have a baby through in vitro fertilization, is that cloning the two of us? Kind of, sorta. But
I know you can clone a dog. Nathan Fielder did it on the rehearsal this season. He went to
well, then we know that it's legal.
Right. Well, wherever they were. Because Nathan Fielder, if he does it.
Right.
Okay. So
I think I would argue that as precedent in court.
Nathan Fielder's the
Your
rehearsal.
Honor, Nathan Fielder did this.
I mean, let me be clear.
That's a really good argument.
Nathan Fielder didn't himself clone this dog. He just found someone that had cloned a dead dog because their whole thing was, will it act like the old dog? It's very fascinating. Watch the rehearsal. So, okay, let's assume that, InGen has now made dinosaurs. And kind of at the end of the movie, it was like, well, that didn't work. So they kind of just leave that island. And, we find out later that the other islands, Site B, are just kind of abandoned. Do they have any legal responsibility at that point to care for those animals? I know we're talking about the first Jurassic Park movie, but just for a second, in Lost World, we start that movie with someone getting hurt by those animals, and InGen is responsible for it. So they are responsible in some ways. Like, what responsibilities do they have to these things that they've made?
Right. And I think the Compy attack at the beginning of Lost World was actually in the book.
Yeah, that's in the first book. Yeah, the original Jurassic Park.
Yeah. So, I mean, do they have responsibility for it? Yeah, they have responsibility for anything that happens with whether you call them pets, whether you call them creations, whether you call them property, in any one of those sorts of characterizations, they're responsible for what happens. In the same way that if I'm out walking a black Labrador down the street and it attacks a kid, I'm responsible for the damages done to that kid. So the legality of that part of it is super clear. So the family that gets attacked by the compies absolutely has a claim. The actor at the beginning, the worker at the beginning that gets eaten by the raptor, his family absolutely has a claim.
I want to ask you about that.
Okay.
Because there has to be a way that they would know that something like this could potentially happen. I mean, really, this isn't even far-fetched because we do have like zoos with wild animals. There's got to be some sort of legally binding waiver where it's like, hey, if you are the lion tamer or the tiger, the person that's loading the tigers into the exhibit, like the zoo is just responsible if anything happens. There's got to be some sort of liability waiver on their part, or else just we wouldn't have zoos.
Right. And if you remove it for a second from thinking about the dangerousness of an animal, and let's think about, like a big, huge factory, molten steel and metal through a factory, super dangerous, right? And so they're going to sign, their employer is going to make them sign documents saying you acknowledge that this is a really dangerous workplace. But if they get hurt because the molten vat of steel leaks and burns their leg off, it's a workers' compensation claim at that point rather than a personal injury claim because they work there. And there's limitations on what you can do with workers' compensation, significantly limiting recovery versus things that you can do for, if you're stopping and having a beach picnic and you get eaten by compies. So the worker aspect of it is going to be very different. Now, the exception to all of that is if they have just a reckless disregard for the safety of their workers. Like, for example, if workplace drove trucks and they just absolutely neglected their trucks on a regular basis and somebody died driving a truck, you could argue that would be extended beyond just normal workers' compensation and would be, negligence for that. So,
well, I mean, you're a lawyer. You saw the beginning of this film. To me, I didn't see anything that they did that was negligent. That looks like a workplace hazard of deciding to work for Jurassic Park. No?
Yeah, it didn't look like they had that they weren't careless. There wasn't an overly dangerous anything. The Velociraptor outsmarted them. That's all there is to it. So, I don't think his family has a claim necessarily for wrongful death. I think that anything that they get is going to be through the workers' compensation system. And then on top of it, there's the PR nightmare that they have of one of their workers died, which then triggers, I mean, that is the MacGuffin for the entire movie, right? I mean, it's the death of that worker that triggers the board of directors investigation, that triggers the lawyer coming to the island, that triggers the need for the scientists, that creates Nedry's opportunity to destroy the world.
You would just think that they have to have a pretty extensive like waiver in the hiring process, right?
I would imagine that the waiver is stacks and stacks of pages of you could die, you won't sue us if you die, your family won't sue us if you die, and all of those things. Just that a lot, you can break through that if the negligence is so severe. It just, like we're talking about, it just looks like this was just a cage accident, and no disrespect, it's just it wasn't like somebody left the paddock open or something. It was the raptor outsmarting everyone.
Okay, so let's assume you're one of InGen's corporate lawyers, right? Now, I thought about this for a long time because people do obviously get eaten and killed in this movie, but let's talk about the blood-sucking lawyer for a minute. I want to know, like, watching, I was like, I don't know if his family has any claim of wrongful death, because could you argue he died because he got out of that car? It's the same thing where it's like, if you stand up on a ride at Six Flags and get decapitated, that's your fault. You weren't supposed to do that. Is that a valid argument? Like, hey, he got out of the car,
Right. I mean, look at those kids. They're totally fine.
Well, here's the thing. But I'm saying they didn't. If they had gotten eaten, I would be like, I don't know if I could defend that, because they stayed in the car. They followed the safety protocols. But Gennaro gets out of the car, which he himself said these shouldn't be unlocked.
Right. He acknowledges that that's a safety risk, and then runs. And then catches the attention of the T-Rex because he's running.
Right.
So in that whole set of liability, first of all, because he's the lawyer, he's probably signed tons of things that prevent him from suing his own company, right, that he works for. And so there's that aspect of the liability.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then the other aspect of the liability is what they call contributory negligence. With contributory negligence, you look at how much of the person caused their own injury. And that's exactly the argument that you're making, right? Which is that he substantially contributed to it. So then we get into the core of all of the liability in Jurassic Park, which is how much of this was sabotage by Nedry versus the negligence of InGen. And if I'm defending InGen, that's what I'm going to be arguing the whole way through. If I'm the lawyer's family, I mean, of course, the poor lawyer, I'm going to be on the side of the poor lawyer always, because brother, I mean, come on.
Is there a brotherhood of lawyers?
There's not.
Okay.
Well, excuse me, lawyers. Yes, we have a brotherhood, sisterhood, themhood, all of those things.
Yeah.
But anyway, I would say that he definitely did contribute because he broke the rules so clearly. I think your example of standing up on a ride at Six Flags and then being upset because I bumped my head, it's the same sort of an argument.
I mean, I guess you could theoretically say that about everyone in that party except for Tim and Lex, because those two are forced out of the car, but Ian gets out of the car on his own volition, which he's not supposed to do. Grant does the same thing. And even though Ellie's not injured per se, she's the first one that breaks the rules of getting out of that car. So could you establish a pattern like, hey, these people with their injuries, whatever they may have sustained, they also were not following safety guidelines that we set out. So even though they got into trouble, it's not really our fault.
I think you have trouble after Gennaro. I think that I think that Gennaro, you've got an argument that, he ran out of the car and he left. And then you've got the whole moral issue of what a jerk, he left the kids on top of all that, which, while is not a legal argument per se, certainly would persuade a jury to not be on Gennaro's side. I mean,
Sure.
as the audience, we're not on his side. We're like, oh, good, he got eaten by a dinosaur. He deserved it because he left those poor kids. The kids, on the other hand, and from there forward, the kids only got out of the car because the T-Rex was eating the car, right? And Ian, actually it was Alan Grant first, right? Gets out of the car, but using his brains trying to save the kids. So again, there's an aspect of him trying to save other human life. And then, Ian is just excited to get out of the car and play with the dinos, I guess.
I'm just saying, like, look, if I'm Hammond, really if I'm Book Hammond, because Book Hammond is a real jerk.
Yes.
Movie Hammond is just a sweet old grandpa.
Movie Hammond's just your grandpa. But he's so nice.
If I'm Book Hammond, I'm like, oh no, these guys are going to sue me into oblivion when we get off this island. Could you not say, like, hey, from the get-go, these guys didn't buckle their seatbelts in the helicopter. These guys got off the moving ride and then, like, establish a pattern of, like, they were breaking rules the minute we got here. So are they really, is it a surprise that they got hurt?
Right. I mean, even that grand moment that we talked about, with the big orchestral swell,
right,
was them getting out of the cars when they weren't supposed to.
Right.
So, I mean, even with that, if I'm the blood-sucking lawyer for InGen, I'm going to argue all those things. I don't know how compelling all of that ends up being, because at the end of the day, when you're dealing with suing a big company, your jury is going to think that they're evil and think that they're bad and think that, well, they have all this money, so we should award, this poor family of this poor lawyer, a bunch of money.
But
so there's an aspect of that.
Gennaro and Malcolm and Muldoon. Okay, there's a lot of people. Let me take this back again. Okay, theoretically, of the people that get off the island alive, only Malcolm is the only one that has, like, damages.
Right.
So I guess if I'm Grant or Ellie, or the kids aren't going to sue their grandpa, but if I'm Grant or Ellie, like, what could you even sue Hammond for? Because, like, isn't the first thing to be like, well, what damage do you have? Well, it was really scary and I almost died.
Yeah.
But you didn't.
Yeah.
You have some cuts and bruises, I guess, but, like, you didn't hurt yourself the way that Malcolm did.
Yeah, the attorneys I know that practice in that area, that's going to be the first question that they had. Like, what's the broken bone? What's the hospital bill? What's the doctor bill?
Right.
What does that look like? Because that's generally how juries figure out awards in any sort of injury case.
Right.
Is let's look at what the dollars were, and we're going to reimburse you for that times whatever we think is appropriate based upon how bad the person was that did the injury. With Malcolm, yeah, obviously. I mean, he had a severely broken leg, bit leg, all of those things. So that is definitely going to be a part of what he's going to argue. But I think you're right that Grant and Ellie would have a hard time. Again, because this is so big and InGen ends up being, the corporate demon, behind all of this, you might have some sympathy, and it might be a very good tactic to say, yeah, I'm traumatized for the rest of my life, and I'm no longer a paleontologist, and I no longer can do this work anymore because you scarred me for life, which they have an argument for that. There's a lot of people who claim emotional distress, and they think that they can sue for that. We get phone calls every week from somebody that wants to sue for emotional distress. We're like, sorry, you can't. That doesn't really, it's technically a cause of action. They teach you that in law school. So there's a bunch of law students right now who are scratching their head. Why do we have to learn that entire chapter? Because it exists, but you have a really hard time proving emotional distress. If there was ever going to be a case of emotional distress, it certainly is going to be Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I guess I just wonder too. It's just like, okay, so actually, you know what? I have a question, but one of you had a great fan question, so we're gonna save it. Let's put a pin. Let's put a pin in that thought for right now. So here's another thing. Okay, let's talk about some actual crimes that happened
Yes.
on Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Talking about the Terminator, a.k.a. Dennis Nedry.
I can't ever think of that character the same again.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
Those figures are
Terminator
insane.
Nedry.
And I'm telling you, like, it's not just Nedry. Like, every character action figure has some, like, insane looking thing. It's bonkers.
I want to see the Timmy action figure.
Oh, Timmy's
like
just
like
popping a
like a
bazooka.
chainsaw.
Yeah. Okay, so let's assume for a minute that Nedry was able to get off the island. He has these embryos. He takes them over to Dodson at Biosyn, and they come out with their dinosaurs theoretically first or at the same time or whatever. So, I mean, wouldn't Biosyn like be like, we can't take stolen stuff? Like, isn't it very obvious that it's stolen at that point?
It should be. It should be
Right.
really obvious that it's stolen. So you have Nedry being liable for theft. And I would argue Nedry liable for every other thing that happens in the park. Now, let's assume for a second that Nedry doesn't get eaten by the spitters.
Right.
And actually, makes it off the island. So he's good for theft. He's good for all of the things that he does with a complete reckless disregard for others. I would say Nedry is good for murder over and over and over again, because that same theory that, you can't fire a bullet into a crowd of people and say, yeah, well, I was just hoping it wouldn't hit anybody. If you do something that's so dangerous, like shutting down all of the fences around a Tyrannosaurus Rex, then you're responsible for the bad things that happen from that. And I would absolutely see a reckless disregard to that level justifying murder charges for everybody that died on the island, anybody that was hurt on the island. And then InGen has a huge claim against Nedry. Now, we know Nedry has $500,000 or whatever,
which seems like not enough for.
It seems like not enough, but I mean, he clearly has some money problems that are not addressed in the movie.
Sure.
So, well, I mean, they're mentioned slightly, but not really delved into. But no, I think that that Nedry is the villain. Nedry has from a legal perspective as well as from a moral perspective, is responsible for this entire movie, everything that goes wrong in this movie.
So I guess the thing is, it's like, okay, so he does die, but is that a defensive engine being like, hey, everything would have been fine if it wasn't for this one criminal? Or does that make them even more liable? Because it's like, well, shouldn't you have caught that in the background checks and you're responsible for your employee?
Well, there's a theory called respondeat superior that says that employers are responsible for what their employees do. And so, an employee driving a truck who runs into some other people and kills somebody, it's not just him that's responsible for that. It's the company that's responsible for that. So InGen can try to put some distance between Nedry and themselves by claiming there was no way that you could anticipate somebody intentionally turning off every single safety feature, bugging the system, and doing all of these things. But I think at the end of the day, it's just going to be a strict liability theory, and they're going to be responsible for all of Nedry's badness.
So what if he got caught? Like, let's say, he gets in that Jeep, the Dilophosaurus is not there. He just, I don't know, he's just a fat bumbling idiot, and he falls down and he somehow gets caught. What kind of charges is he looking at in terms of like the hacking, in terms of the theft? He's clearly caught red-handed with those embryos. I mean, like, are we talking about like, is this potential life sentence?
Yeah, I believe so, because I think Nedry, if he ends up with police guards getting him at the dock,
right?
He's good for murder, because it's that reckless disregard for the safety of others, and that's going to be a life sentence. So Nedry turning off the fences, and from Gennaro to every other person that died in that park.
But no, Gennaro, I mean, couldn't you argue Gennaro got out of the car? So
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
so that's one less.
Yeah.
You know?
But you could argue that, but
certainly
I don't
Samuel
know that would
Jackson.
I don't know that would be a defense to the murder though, because.
Okay, then let's flip this whole thing. Now Nedry's your client.
Okay.
So how are you getting him, or what are you doing for him? Is there anything you can do for him at this point? He gets caught at the docks. Everything else plays out exactly the same, except Nedry's alive and caught.
So Nedry's still good for the theft no matter what.
Right.
So that's going to happen. There's no way of getting him out of the theft. I think I'm arguing for Nedry that his safety systems were designed to only turn off the fences for his 18-minute window, and nothing bad should have happened during an 18-minute window. And that I've never really thought about this before, but that it was Samuel Jackson screwing around on the computer that actually made it worse. And then they turned off all the systems, which made it even more worse. And so really Nedry's actions didn't constitute murder. It was maybe, a manslaughter charge. And so I'm arguing to lower the murder charge down to a manslaughter charge and get him less time. He's still good for the theft, and he's still good for some level of negligence, just maybe not murder. See how I put on my Jurassic Park hat and just put on my lawyer hat?
Like I said in the last episode that we did, I'm trying to make you the most hated man on the internet. I'm trying to have you defend.
Click.
Tell
me I'm wrong. Tell me how I'm wrong. I want to hear that.
Okay. So yeah. So you're resigning to the fact that like if Nedry at this point is caught, you're like, hey man, we're gonna have to plea out.
Absolutely.
At best.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no way of getting him off the hook.
Do you go after? But I'm saying like, do you try to roll over on Dotson and Biosyn and be like, hey, my client will testify for immunity or at least a lesser charge? I don't know if you could do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that anybody's going to give him immunity because what he did was so despicable. But if you argue the lovable nature of not Terminator Nedry for the action figure, but actual real theater Newman Nedry, then I mean I think there's something to argue there about a lower charge or a lesser charge. There's also I think that they would rather get the parent company and maybe Dodgson rather than maybe getting, the fall guy, the guy that was actually there.
I mean, here's a really important question. What charge does he get for putting shaving cream on a piece of pie?
So that's poison.
Is it?
So
I've never eaten shaving cream, so I don't know.
Let's assume the worst case scenario.
Okay.
And shaving cream isn't just gross.
Okay.
Let's assume that there's a level of toxicity in there.
Sure.
So he poisons somebody.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a code section for that. That's a crime in and of itself. Now, on that, I would defend him for he didn't think somebody would really eat it, and he didn't think somebody would really get harmed. But yeah, I hadn't thought about the barbasol on the pie.
Dude, he's a menace.
He's a menace. He's just killing people left and right.
Those sunglasses on. He's gonna keep cutting back to this action figure B-roll because I just need the people at home to know that that's a real thing. And if anybody wants to go on eBay and buy me a new one, please, I would love to have it. We'll put it right here front and center.
Oh, for sure.
For the rest of the show. All right, so you've heard from me a little bit. Now we're going to get into some fan questions. And I want to start with this one because we're talking about maybe the misunderstood villains of this whole story.
Right.
Which is the dinosaurs themselves.
Right.
So this comes from, and I'm blind in one eye, so Opal Clocart. Could the dinosaurs sue for negligence? And I'm expanding on that, and I guess I would just want to know, like, can animals be represented by people to sue their owners? Like if a dog is getting kicked by their owner, can someone on behalf of that dog sue that owner?
Okay, so two aspects to this.
Okay.
First of all is the question about, can a dog sue an owner? No. But
no, or it hasn't been tried yet.
No.
Okay.
But we do have criminal regulations where the people of the state of California have decided that we don't like the fact that somebody might kick a dog.
Okay.
And so it becomes a public crime rather than a crime to a pet. So using that as an analogy might help frame the conversation a bit. I mean, there's not the dog can't actually sue people for money, but its owner could certainly go to jail for hurting it and beating it, right? So, but then now we're going to dinos, and I love Opal's question about this because I think it's so sweet. I think it comes from a position of dinos have rights too.
Sure. Yeah.
So in this genetic modification world, I'm going to argue why dinos should get to sue for negligence because they're genetically modified and there's going to be some gray area because they made them smarter than people. Mm-hmm. So why wouldn't they have standing? So I'm going to argue that the dinos have rights. And dinos can sue InGen and
for being created.
Sure.
I mean,
and those fences.
Can I sue God for creating me?
Well, good luck serving him.
Well, could I win a case against God for him not showing up to court?
Can you win a case if somebody doesn't show up to court? Yes. Can you sue your creator in a cosmic sense? No. But in this world where we have basically done the equivalent of IVF for lizards.
Yes.
Right? Using the turtle DNA and and expanding them and all of that. I'm going to argue that because these awesome beasts are so smart that and potentially, especially the raptors, have gained sentience. Mm-hmm. I'm going to argue that they can sue. Opal, I totally want to take that case.
Okay, hold on.
I want to argue that dinos have rights.
Hold on.
I love it. I love everything about it.
How are you going to get a raptor on the stand?
You just have to, provide a court interpreter like you would for anybody speaking another language.
So we need Chris Pratt.
Means I've been hurt and I'm sad in Dino.
But you could make up anything.
I know. Isn't it great?
No. There's not a jury there's not a judge that would not throw that out before it ever made it that far.
I know, but sometimes you take cases on principle, Billy.
Sure. If you want to if you want to be able to write a book afterwards,
it's been done. It's been done for sure.
Well, actually, on that same note,
yes.
This is a question from Brandon Miller. I like this one, and this goes into a little bit of Lost World. What would the NDA had to have looked like for the scientists and, Gennaro and everyone prior to coming to the park in the first movie? Did the character of Ian Malcolm violate it by writing a book about it, his experience? We find out at the beginning of Lost World that he has gone public. A lot of people kind of don't believe him at that point. He's a little bit crazy. But this question also made me think there's kind of a huge store that in the movie. They sit there and she's eating ice cream. He's talking about his flea circus, and they're surrounded by Jurassic Park merchandise. So it's like, think about the infrastructure of all the people that made the park, all the licensors that are printing off Jurassic Park merchandise in world. It's like, a lot of people know about what this thing is. It's not just a zoo. They know what it is. How do you even start to enforce an NDA when we're talking hundreds of thousands of people have to be involved before anyone even knows what this is?
Yeah, I love that you ask about licensing because, from Jurassic Park hats to red dinosaurs to green dinosaurs to spitters, there's so much merch, and all over the place. And so, I mean, really, all you have to do is take a look at Disney to know what a company that's big enough and strong enough can do to enforce NDAs. So the first part of the question, what does that NDA look like? It says you can't say anything to anyone ever about this. And so is Ian breaking the NDA? No question, he is breaking the NDA by writing his book. And if Grant or Ellie end up also talking about it or doing anything about it, they're violating the NDA. The non-disclosure agreement in this would be can't talk about it to anyone at any time ever. It's dangerous. You risk getting hurt if you go down here. I mean, the liability waiver that they would have him sign along with the non-disclosure agreement would be airtight and would be pages and pages and pages and pages and
pages. But again, we're talking about like hundreds of thousands of people are signing this Bible-sized NDA. Like, what InGens? There must be hundreds, if not thousands, of InGen lawyers. Like, it's not
for sure.
Yeah, how big is that legal team?
It's got to be huge, and for any big company like that, they're going to have a whole entire legal department and outside law firms and everything else. I mean, think about when Disney most recently created the Galactic Star Cruiser.
Sure.
Right? So new park, super secret, and everyone had to be quiet about the plot line of the experience, as well as, hiding the merch, hiding what they did. And nobody outside of the company knew really what was going on going in.
Right.
And again, we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So I think that using the Disney model, the fact that there's that many people just means it needs to be airtight, and then you get buy-in from the people like Walt Disney did. We want buy-in from you. You're doing something special. If you share with the world what you're going to see when you drive the Jeep over the ridge, then you're going to take away that moment, and so you get buy-in from the people as well. And Grandpa John Hammond from the movie could definitely have inspired his people to do that. So the NDA would be thick, but then I think that the enforcement part of it is doing what Walt Disney did, which is tell people how amazing this was going to be and inspire them to keep it a secret.
So you brought up Grandpa John Hammond.
Yeah.
This question comes from Linda. Is there anything that makes all of this legally worse that children were involved? Wouldn't Gennaro know better to allow children to go on the first test?
Well, yeah. It's so
like if
much...
the children weren't there, or is it like slightly less legally? I'm not talking about morally, ethically. I'm talking about in a court of law. Is it just 1,000 times worse that there are two minors on there?
The analysis of that starts with Grandpa, right? Because Grandpa arguably is the parental control figure over the grandkids, for the purposes of this disaster of a weekend. So Grandpa can't leave guns lying out on his coffee table, cleaning guns while the kids come into the room, right? Grandpa can't have them cleaning the lawnmower, with it turned on, I mean, or any other like super dangerous thing. Can't give Timmy the keys to the car.
Right.
So it's child endangerment is what it is. And it's a reckless disregard for the safety of the children. And we definitely do have laws that specifically make it worse for people that endanger children rather than just annoy or bother or upset adults.
Right.
So, there are statutes that deal with criminally punishing people who have huge marital spats, but their kids are nearby. That's a separate crime and beyond, whatever they might do if they're hitting each other or doing something like that. So the idea that kids, when they're traumatized, it's a second crime and a second cause of action happens in the real world all the time.
Yeah, I mean, probably not the best. I get it, though. He wants kids to experience the kids.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know we're just talking Jurassic Park. And like I said, there are 6 sequels, and I'm sure at some point down the road we will do a Jurassic World sequel. But I do want to ask on the Jurassic World front. This event happens, and this is not an isolated event. We get another 2 movies where something happens on a different island. So like InGen, let's not even like run past the fact that a T-Rex gets loose in the middle of the city thanks to InGen.
In San Diego.
Right. Is there any way that you could see legally, take financials off the board, legally, that anyone would allow Jurassic World to open 12 years later?
I don't see how they could. I mean, let's look at attractions in general, right? If I knew that the Colossus roller coaster at Six Flags Magic Mountain in Valencia, California was by design problematic and it gave people whiplash or it cut off their heads or it, hurt them or had the tendency to go off the track and shoot people out in the air and over the parking lot, right? I mean, if we knew that ride was just inherently dangerous, no insurance company, legal board, or legal department, no one is going to allow that to exist again. I don't even understand how InGen gets away with creating Disney World only 12 years after.
I said 12. It's 22.
Okay.
But I don't know if that changed.
That's totally different. Never mind.
Well, no, I meant like
no. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't.
We have to know. Think that, but technology in 22 years can be like the idea of like a cell phone doing what it can do in your pocket in 1993 as opposed to 2015 is very different. You have to assume that if that kind of technological upgrade could be applied to security, could be applied to a lot of different things. So I'm just wondering, like, first of all, like, what do you think? Just, obviously we're speculating, but it's like InGen was bought out by that Maserati company. Like, what did that look like?
Right.
Yeah. How long did that merger take? Thinking of Jurassic World now, and it's like, it's pretty buttoned up to the point where it's like they've got, they've got restaurants, they've got shopping, they've got everything.
What I was thinking as I was watching that movie is what if we tweaked it enough where they weren't doing something stupid like making raptors anymore. And they certainly weren't doing something like the Indominus Rex. I mean, the name itself, right? And they're not trying to make scarier and more dangerous attractions. That it's more like a zoo. That it's this beautiful San Diego Zoo kind of a environment,
right?
Where you get to interact in nature and all of those things. You take the danger part out of it, so that it wouldn't be as exciting, and people that are looking for the excitement wouldn't go. But what if they made Jurassic World and it was all Vegisauruses? It was all those sorts of dinosaurs, and I think you're in really good shape. Now, is it going to be as exciting as going and seeing a T-Rex? No, but it's also not going to be like getting shot out of a cannon.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we kind of get a glimpse of that at the beginning of Jurassic World where you see the kids, and it is like a petting zoo.
Yeah, like a petting zoo, and they're riding on the back of the
Stegosaurus or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just, it's crazy to me that it's like, how could you have these very public kind of mess ups where a lot of people died. There was a ton of I mean, Lost World makes the first Jurassic Park look like nothing compared to the amount of damage that T-Rex does in San Diego. So it's just like, is there any...
I mean, the poor dog in the backyard next to the pool.
The dog, yeah. I don't know if Jurassic World would ever like legally be allowed to happen.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. And then we're not going into the legalities of Jurassic World today, but if you think about like the level of liability that they have, it just ups to an nth degree because they should have known better. And that argument is made.
Yeah, like how do you even afford to go to Jurassic World? Because the insurance premium that I'm sure they would pass off through ticket sales would just be astronomical.
It would have to be.
It would be like $10,000 a person.
Right, but as the blood-sucking lawyer says in the first one, we could charge anything you want, and then we can have a coupon day or something,
He says it as though he's one of the investors, and I'm sure he just bought a lot of stock. Actually, hey, if he bought a bunch of stock after going, like let's say nothing bad happened that weekend, is that insider trading?
Yeah.
So he couldn't do it.
No, he shouldn't be.
So why does he care about the profit then? He's not going to get any.
Because he's a really good lawyer.
He just cares.
He just
much.
really was.
Actually, that's a good question. Could any of them go home and buy InGen stock? If nothing bad had happened.
Nothing bad had happened.
Yeah.
Probably the people that were not employees could probably get away with it.
Like Ian.
Yeah.
Ellie.
I mean, Ellie. Yeah. Grant. They could probably get away with it and have that not be insider trading because they're not in the board of directors. They're not in the corporate suite, and that's usually what they limit that to.
I mean,
on the other hand, like flip it on its head, if John Hammond or the grandkids' parents sold all their stock before the press release came out, then that also would be short selling the company.
I would love if Hammond was on that helicopter at the very end. He'd be like, "Hey, before Monday morning, do you think you could just dump all my shares? No reason.
No reason.
Yeah,
no reason.
Just
nothing bad happened. No one got eaten.
Everything's fine.
Kinda.
We're all fine here now. How are you?
Here now.
Well, Doug, that brings us to the end of today's episode. We're talking about Jurassic Park. Like I said, there's a multitude of sequels. Another one hitting theaters, Jurassic World Rebirth. When are they going to learn, man?
Jurassic Park Rebirth, Redo,
Redug.
Reinvited.
What other celebrities can we throw on an island to run away from a dinosaur?
At least it's Scarlett Johansson.
I mean,
at least it's Black Widow.
Fairly capable.
My money's on her.
And you know what? I think that you at home are fairly capable of hitting like and subscribe right now. I believe in you. Leave a comment. Is there anything we missed? Is there anything that you want to yell at Doug for?
Please.
He's challenged all of you to put your best lawyer jokes in there. I am Billy Business. This is the blood-sucking lawyer, Doug Ridley. We will see you guys right here on Doug Defends next week. Hello, Jerry.
I'll be back.